Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience and for coming today and for being here. You know, the Department of Defense is highly reliant on acquiring customized and commercial off-the-shelf computers, communications equipment, integrated circuits, application software, and other information communications technology to maintain its crucial advantage over our adversaries and in support of partner nations and allies around the world. The Department strives to develop cutting-edge technology that provides superior capabilities to the warfighter to fulfill critical mission operations. In order to achieve that goal, the Department is dependent in part on its ability to incorporate rapidly evolving, leading-edge microelectronic devices into its defense systems, including technologies for which there is little or no commercial demand. More concerning, and with increasing frequency, commercial business trends are forcing the Department and its commercial supplier base to rely on foreign-owned companies to produce some of the most advanced technology solutions. Although the globalization of the semiconductor industry has increased the pace of technological innovation, it also raises national security concerns for the United States. The functionality of the Department's mission-critical systems and networks extensively leverages commercial, globally sourced microelectronics. However, this consequently provides state and non-state adversaries an opportunity to corrupt our supply chain. At one end are counterfeit microelectronics, which can have detrimental performance impacts on our systems, all the way to systems specifically designed to introduce malicious code into the supply chain and otherwise gain illicit access to the Department's military systems and networks. In 2003, the Defense Science Board Task Force on High-Performance Microchip Supply concluded that the Department had, and I quote, no overall vision of its future microelectronics components needs and how to deal with them. Technology and supply problems are addressed as they arise. An overall vision would enable the Department to develop approaches to meeting its needs before each individual supply source becomes an emergency, unquote. Not until 6 years later, in 2009, and in response to legislation contained in the fiscal year 2009 National Defense Authorization Act, did the Department develop a strategy to address the issue of assured access to secure and reliable microelectronics. But even today, the implementation and successful execution of that strategy is questionable, and the uncertainty of the Department's ability to maintain military superiority in critical leading-edge microelectronics technology is in doubt by many on this committee. Recently, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States approved the acquisition of IBM's Microelectronics Foundry, the Department's sole source U.S.-based supplier for leading-edge microelectronics, by a foreign-owned company. Now that the IBM is no longer available as a guaranteed source for the Department's needs for trusted microelectronics, the Department is facing potentially alarming vulnerabilities as a consequence of relying on a sole source supplier for leading-edge microelectronics for the past 10 years. The risk to the Department's increases dramatically with the loss of IBM's trusted foundry, and will be further exacerbated as long as no clear solution exists for how the Department plans to mitigate this challenge. Together, we must solve the challenges confronting the Department's assured access to trusted microelectronics in a long-term, sustainable, efficient, and most important, affordable fashion. Today at this hearing, we hope to learn more about the risks and issues confronting the Department in acquiring secure, trusted, leading-edge microelectronics. And we hope to understand more about the Department's strategy and any course corrections needed to address these issues. But before I introduce the witnesses, I turn to the Oversight Investigation Subcommittee ranking member for her opening remarks. Anything she'd like to make?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like all of us to imagine the following frightening scenario. Hostilities in the South China Sea are at their peak. The U.S. Navy has formed a blockade around disputed islands. An alarm sound on the bridge of one of our ships. There are aircraft approaching our blockade when suddenly all the monitors on the bridge go dark. Why is this happening? Well, in our hypothetical story, it's because the semiconductor manufacturer who created parts for the ship's radar system was based in China. And 5 years earlier, the Chinese Army had placed a kill switch in our radar. We have just lost the war without ever firing a shot. This is a stark example, but it is entirely possible. As our reliance on microelectronics grows and the world's production of these components continues its overwhelming shift to Asia, the risk grows right alongside it. We must be acutely aware that production of these components overseas is a critical vulnerability for the United States. It allows our adversaries an opportunity to corrupt critical infrastructure and introduce malicious code, greatly increases the loss of intellectual property, and it could cut off our access to critical technologies or disrupt supply. We know that our adversaries are committed in their effort to counter, copy, or kill our weapons and target our technological edge. We should not make it easy for them. We should also be doing everything we can to harness the innovative power of technology companies right here in the United States so that we can pull ourselves back ahead of the curve on this issue. As the microelectronics production migrates to Asia, we should be investing in the work of capable entrepreneurs and researchers like those in Silicon Valley to ensure they develop future technologies that will give us assured access to alternative, trusted sources of leading-edge components. Hardware is an especially critical part of this puzzle. Compared with software, hardware vulnerabilities are harder to detect, more destructive, and harder to repair. Integrated circuits and microelectronics are used in everything from cruise missiles to drones and classified computer systems. Building a kill switch into a computer chip could mean embedding as few as 1,000 transistors hidden throughout the hundreds of millions that are already in the original design. It could shut down a radar system, steer a missile off course, or cause an airplane engine to fail catastrophically. The steps we've already taken, such as establishing the Trusted Defense System Strategy, the Trusted Access Program, and the Trusted Foundries Program, are critical. But we must do more. We have to figure out a way to stay ahead of this threat and provide the Department of Defense and the intelligence community with a stable domestic supply chain while maintaining a leading edge on microelectronic devices that have no commercial demand. We must also do more to collaborate with the private sector and develop innovative ways around this problem. Technology innovators throughout my district push the envelope of what is possible every day. But as we all know too well, pushing the envelope inside the halls of the Pentagon often takes time, too much time. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses and their analysis of future technological developments and the current progress towards ensuring access to trusted mission-critical microelectronics. And I'd like to thank Chairwoman Hartzler for holding this hearing today, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Spear. Our witnesses with us today are Ms. Marie Mack from the Government Accountability Office, and she's the Director of the Acquisition and Sourcing Management Team for GAO. Mr. Andre Gunger from the Office of the Secretary of Defense. He is the Acting Director, Assistant Secretary for Defense for Manufacturing and Industrial Base Policy. Ms. Kristen Baldwin, also from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and she is the Principal Deputy Assistant Director of Defense for Systems Engineering. And Mr. Brett Hamilton, a government representative of the United States Navy, is the Chief Engineer for Trusted Microelectronics in the Flight Systems Division of the Global Deterrence and Defense Department at the Crane Division of the Naval Surface Warfare Center located in Crane, Indiana. So thank you all for being with us today, and we'll now begin with our opening statements. So Ms. Mack, we'll begin with you as soon as you're ready to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Hartzler, Ranking Member Speyer, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me here today to discuss GAO's work on DOD's effort to provide access to trusted leading-edge microelectronics. DOD's ability to provide superior capabilities to the warfighter is dependent, in part, on its ability to incorporate rapidly evolving leading-edge microelectronic devices into its defense systems while balancing national security concerns. However, market trends have created challenges for DOD. Increasing capital costs to make and produce these devices can be several $billions annually. This has resulted in increased specialization and consolidation by industry. Once dominated by domestic sources, microelectronics manufacturing is now largely conducted outside the U.S., primarily in Asia, and largely focused on high-volume production and short life cycles driven by demand for consumer electronics. In contrast, DOD requirements for microelectronics tend to be low volume with unique requirements that generally are needed for very long periods because weapon systems are often sustained over decades. My statement today largely leverages off of our April 2015 sensitive but unclassified report on this topic. The two areas that I would like to highlight today are, first, the implementation of the Trusted Supplier Program, and second, the extent the Trusted Supplier Program provides for DOD's current and future access to leading-edge trusted microelectronics. DOD developed the Trusted Supplier Program as part of its overall Trusted Defense Systems strategy. This strategy focuses on assessing DOD programs for their vulnerabilities and developing policies for requiring trust, meaning all the people and processes used to design, manufacture, and distribute national security critical components must be assessed for integrity. In 2006, DOD began expanding the number of trusted suppliers through an accreditation process, but only one had the capabilities to provide leading-edge technologies that meet their needs. Despite DOD's efforts to expand the number of trusted suppliers, it did not address alternative sources for leading-edge microelectronics. It largely focused on two elements of risk: integrity, keeping malicious content out, and confidentiality, keeping critical information from getting out. However, the strategy did not address the risk of relying on a single supplier, leading to DOD's dependence on it for over a decade. As a result, DOD is currently in a situation where potentially there are no good answers to address the what now question. And that brings me to my second point: DOD's current and future access to leading-edge trusted microelectronics. Over 10 years ago, a Defense Science Board task force stated that the pace of these technologies being manufactured offshore was alarming due to its strategic significance to the U.S. economy and DOD's ability to maintain a technological advantage, and concluded at that point that urgent action was needed. DOD sought to mitigate this risk by awarding a contract to the only U.S.-owned corporation that could meet DOD's needs for trusted leading-edge microelectronics. Yet relying on this single supplier all this time created uncertainty regarding current and future access and its capabilities. In July 2015, the single provider transferred its microelectronics fabrication business to a U.S.-based foreign-owned entity, resulting in increased uncertainties about DOD's access. Our work this past year found that in the short term, DOD has no alternatives to the leading-edge microelectronics. As a result, there are risks for the DOD programs that use these technologies. For the longer term, we reviewed various options, including ongoing research and the possibility of a government-owned fabrication facility, the details of which are sensitive and therefore cannot be discussed in this forum. However, I'd be happy to discuss them at a later time at your convenience. But the bottom line is that not only is the U.S. reliant on a single provider, it now faces the unknown risk of relying on one that is foreign-owned. DOD is in a position where it faces some very difficult and complex decisions with potentially significant costs and national security implications. Microelectronics is just the latest of several defense industrial base issues. Other examples include rare earth materials, specialty metals, and counterfeit parts. We need an industrial-based strategy that is much more proactive and less reactive. Chairwoman Hartzler, Ranking Member Spire, members of the subcommittee, this completes my prepared statement. I would be pleased to respond to any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. That was very informative. So, Mr. Gungor, you're now recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman Hartzler, Ranking Member Spear, and distinct members of the subcommittee, my name is Andre Gudger. I'm the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for Manufacturing and Industrial-Based Policy, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I'm joined here to my left with Ms. Kristen Baldwin, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for System Engineering, and to her left, Mr. Brett Hamilton, Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane. The role of the Office of Manufacturing Industrial-Based Policy is to advise the Secretary of Defense on all matters related to the defense industrial base. My office assesses proposed mergers, acquisitions, and foreign investment involving defense-related companies. Additionally, we assess the entire defense industrial base, make recommendations to the Secretary about its health, and then, when necessary, utilize DOD authorities to advance, sustain, shape, and support the industrial base. In particular, the global semiconductor industry is a key growth sector in the global economy. The U.S. semiconductor industry dominates 50% of the global market share. However, as technology and demand has advanced, it has driven the dynamics of this industry in a way that presents distinct challenges for DOD. The department relies on innovation and commercialization of the U.S. semiconductor industry to maintain a healthy industrial supply for its systems. The escalating cost of investment for innovation in this industry is the single biggest factor facing U.S. suppliers, wrestling with the decision to either join forces with other cash-rich entities making the necessary billion-dollar investment, or simply quit the costly manufacturing business altogether. The DOD is less than 1% market share and has minimal influence over the semiconductor industry. The department considers the dwindling number of domestic microelectronic manufacturers as a significant risk and may affect the most advanced microelectronics for the defense systems and platforms that must remain technology superior to our adversaries who are gaining traction through global industry players. In July of 2015, GlobalFoundries purchased IBM-based U.S.-based trusted foundries, creating concerns associated with the department's reliance on a sole source and single qualified IBM-based technology component. These components are designed specifically for and used in many of DOD's major defense acquisition programs. DOD, the intelligence community, and Department of Energy assess how the loss of access to IBM's trusted foundry would disrupt their current and future national security programs. For the DOD, the total cost of loss assessed would be greater than $1 billion. And given the research, redesign, prototyping, requalification, test, reproduction costs required to replace the required trusted foundry components, it's unknown. Operationally, the consequences of interrupting the national security programs that use these components are incalculable. Based on this assessment, the department determined that the top priority is continuity of supply for these unique trusted products over the short and midterm. Concurrently, my office coordinated with other DOD elements, including Defense Microelectronic Activity and the Defense Security Service, to ensure GlobalFoundries could obtain the appropriate accreditations to be a DOD trusted supplier post this transaction. The department continues to work closely with GlobalFoundries as a source for the U.S.-based defense microelectronics. The department continually conducts vigorous analysis of global markets to ensure the U.S. industrial base remains vibrant, competitive, and supporting all of DOD's needs. The department is conducting a microelectronics industrial base study. This study goal is to lay a foundation for a dynamic partnership with key microelectronic industry players. A team of government experts conducted site visits at several selected microelectronic companies, exchanging views with the department on how we could pursue business models that would be consistent with industry. The study both made assessments of industry current capabilities, it summarized the voice of industry, and is making recommendations on how the department can engage microelectronics marketplace, not just today, but beyond. At the study's conclusion, the team will recommend strategies to the department's requirements while addressing a sustainable commercial strategy for the future. Additionally, the department is taking steps to proactively identify our current and future critical suppliers in fragile sectors like that of the microelectronics industry. The department is deploying business intelligence tools utilizing big data principles to leverage the latest technologies and analysis techniques. This will allow DOD to engage proactively in the future to ensure that we have access to commercially driven technologies that maintain the military advantage on the battlefield. I would like to thank the committee for allowing me to speak today. As you can see, the department's focused on addressing the challenges that are stemming from domestic and global microelectronics industry trends as DOD expands its trusted defense system strategy. I look forward to answering any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Baldwin, you're now recognized for your opening statement.
Madam Chairwoman Hartzler, Ranking Member Spear, members of the committee, I'm pleased to come before you today to testify about the Department of Defense's assured access to microelectronics. For a number of years, the department has been on a path to implement a trusted defense system strategy. Codified in policy in 2012, this strategy manages risks to our systems from foreign intelligence collection, supply chain exploitation, and battlefield loss. DOD acquisition programs conduct program protection planning activities throughout the life cycle to mitigate opportunities for adversaries to sabotage or subvert mission-critical system functions, system designs, and critical components of our systems. Critical components may be comprised of software, firmware, or hardware, whether specifically designed for DoD or commercially sourced. The protection of critical components is addressed through secure engineering designs and architectures, supply chain risk management practices, software and hardware assurance activities, and anti-tamper techniques. Program protection planning gives special attention to application-specific integrated circuits, or ASICs. For ASICs that are custom designed, custom manufactured, or tailored for specific DoD military use, DoD requires they be procured from a trusted supplier accredited by the Defense Microelectronics Activity, or DMEA. DMEA manages the Trusted Supplier Program. DMEA accredits suppliers as trusted in the areas of integrated circuit design, aggregation, brokerage, mask manufacturing, foundry, post-processing, packaging and assembly, and test services. These services cover a broad range of technologies and are intended to support both new and legacy applications, both classified and unclassified. There are currently 72 DMEA-accredited suppliers covering 153 services, including 22 suppliers that can provide full-service trusted foundry capabilities. One of these full-service trusted foundries is the Global Foundries Trusted Foundry. In addition to trust, this trusted foundry provides U.S. government guaranteed access to leading-edge trusted microelectronics services. For these leading-edge, state-of-the-art microelectronics technology needs, the Department is concerned not only with trust and protection of our designs, but also the ability to compete for access to these technologies with commercial customers who command high-volume production requirements in comparison with typical low-volume needs of the Department. The Trusted Foundry has served DoD and interagency needs since 2003. Another important aspect of program protection is hardware and software assurance, or the evaluation of our microelectronics components and our software to ensure they function as intended and have not been altered. Last year, the Department established a joint federated assurance center, federating expertise, tools, and methods to support acquisition program hardware and software assurance needs. The Naval Surface Warfare Center at Crane serves as the chair of this federation, the Hardware Assurance Technical Working Group. In this role, Crane leads coordination of the core hardware assurance laboratories across the Army, Navy, Air Force, and NSA. Looking ahead, the Department must seek options that enable both trust and access to needed microelectronics capability from the commercial marketplace. Research is ongoing at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the Intelligence Advanced Research Project Agency, and also in our military departments to advance technologies such as improved hardware and software assurance tools for analyzing provenance and functionality, embedded sensors that can uniquely identify and track a device, and whether any tampering has occurred, new microelectronics design techniques to enable transfer of production from one foundry to another, mitigating risk from losing access to a particular supplier, and the ability to disaggregate chip designs and manufacture subcomponents in different locations. Demonstration and transition of technologies such as these will augment the enduring foundations of program protection planning, supply chain risk management, system security engineering, our DMEA, and the network of certified trusted microelectronics suppliers, and the federation of tools and expertise to evaluate hardware and software that are central to the Department's trusted systems strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. And now, last but certainly not least, Mr. Hamilton. Very excited to see your show and tell that you brought as well. So,
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman Hartzler, Ranking Member Spear, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today to testify about our efforts related to microelectronics assurance. So microelectronics hardware provides the root of trust for many DOD intelligence community systems. It is absolutely critical that this hardware be both trustworthy and reliable to perform as designed when needed. This is a critical national issue as trustworthy microelectronics hardware is also prevalent in many vital areas of the global economy such as energy, transportation, banking, and commerce industries. The Joint Federated Assurance Center laboratories, referred to as JFAC, have a long history of assuring microelectronics integrity, including support of the Navy Strategic Systems Program and NSA's cryptographic systems. These government laboratories are unique in the expertise and the capability that address the malicious threat and have experience in safeguarding sensitive information relating to uncovered threats and vulnerabilities, specialized analysis techniques, and details of the system's use. In order to better quantify the system risk, continued technical reconnaissance is needed to enable a more proactive stance in identifying potential vulnerabilities. Threat assessments can be greatly assisted by taking advantage of the capabilities of other government agencies, such as law enforcement and the intelligence community. The JFAC is exploring information sharing opportunities with the intelligence, counterintelligence, and law enforcement communities to provide additional insight into the amount of risk associated with particular microelectronics components. For example, the Air Force Office of Special Investigation has made available select microelectronic components obtained through investigative liaison efforts for forensic analysis. The counterintelligence perspective enables a more thorough assessment of the threat. Microelectronics technology driven by the commercial sector is advancing at a very rapid pace. It is therefore critical that our JFAC labs establish technical capability in the area of emerging technology. For example, Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane has utilized Naval Innovative Science and Engineering R&D opportunities and Naval Sea Systems Command Capital Improvement Program to greatly enhance its microelectronics trust verification capabilities over the past few years. This capability and these capability enhancements also support the Navy's traditional failure analysis and high reliability microelectronics missions, which require similar expertise and equipment. The capability is currently supporting the Navy's JFAC Hardware Assurance Pilot Program and several other programs of record in the area of trusted assurance, including extensive work with the Strategic Systems Program and Integrated Warfare Systems. Access to design information is very important to the ability to cost-effectively perform independent verification of microelectronic components. If these files and other design information are delivered to the government as one of the deliverables in a contract, the time and cost to verify these components can be minimized. The term acquire to verify has been coined to promote this idea. JFAC members are compiling lessons learned from current and recent design efforts to generate a general design guide that will include best practices to support independent verification for trust assurance. It is also critical to establish and maintain relationships with microelectronic manufacturers. This is particularly important in the case of commercial parts where the design information is held by these manufacturers. A few such relationships have been fostered by DOD organizations, and they have proven to be very beneficial to trust verification efforts. Not only is the semiconductor manufacturing environment evolving, but so is the threat. There is a growing concern pertaining to unauthorized remanufactured parts, often referred to as clones, which not only pose a potential malicious threat, but also reliability concerns as very poor quality has been observed in these parts. Finally, there has been an alarming increase in the number of academic publications discussing the implementation of hardware Trojans. Therefore, we must stay vigilant and evolve our approach to ensure trust in such a dynamic environment. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. I would just start with you. You brought some examples there. Do you want to share a little bit about those, why you brought them, and what the implications to our hearing today?
Okay, the first example that I'll pass up for you to examine is a traditional microcircuit where we actually opened up the lid so you can see what's inside. So that particular part was from an actual counterfeit investigation that we did. So that particular part is about a 15-year-old design. It was designed in 250 nanometers, so that's the actual size of the transistors in there. State of the art now is 10 nanometer. So that particular part there has probably around 1 million transistors in it. The current record for the most transistors in a commercial part is a Xilinx FPGA, which has 20 billion transistors. So you mentioned Ranking Member Spear mentioned 1,000 transistors in a device. So think about trying to find 1,000 transistors out of 20 billion if someone wanted to do something bad to a part like that. So it's a technical challenge, but there is work going on to try to address this and through technical means. So the second board is just a representation of a circuit board. And there was some mention of interest in 3D ICs and die stacking. So in this particular case, these are the individual integrated circuits on the board. In die stacking, those individual transistors, individual dies are stacked on each other into one package, and it greatly enhances the density. We've been seeing these in our laboratory, especially in flash memory and devices like that for the commercial sector, where they want to pack as much memory as they can into your digital camera and things like that. But this technology is starting to show up in a much broader spectrum to increase performance and help scale the technology.
What could you do maliciously with one transistor?
With one transistor, you could make something fail, possibly, and a denial of service. And that's the simplest kind of attack. So the hidden kill switch gets a lot of attention. To do something to that level, you would have to have a lot of information about the design. If you don't know much about the design and you just wanted to do something to cause random problems, intermittent failures, then a single transistor failing could potentially take that integrated circuit down.
Wow. Okay, what's next?
So here is another integrated circuit, and this is an example of one without the lid opened up, and it's what's called a ball grid array. So you see the back, those little bitty solder balls?
Yep.
That is placed onto the printed circuit board, and then the whole thing's heated up, and they all just make contact at one time. That particular part, I don't remember exactly how many solder balls that has. I would say probably around 80 or 90. But there are parts now that have 1,000 of those solder balls on there. And it's just, the complexity of these microelectronics is amazing.
It really is. Next.
So the last example is just another circuit board, a little bit newer version. Some of the parts there have the different kinds of bonding package. That particular part also has a fan on it. A lot of our focus has traditionally been on the very critical parts. But one thing important is that we have to look at this as a system approach, and every part in the system is critical to a certain degree. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the system.
So we only have one foundry in our country that puts this together, right? The foundry that IBM had that's now sold.
So the foundry makes the integrated circuits. They make the
Okay.
chips.
Mm-hmm, gotcha. Actually put it together. So as co-chairman of the Joint Federated Assurance Center, what challenges and risks do you assess may affect DOD's access to assured and secure microelectronics in the future?
Well, that's a tough question. I think to a certain degree, the purpose of JFAC is going to be to perform an independent verification of the microelectronics no matter what the source. So a lot of the parts that enter the system, the DOD today, aren't from the IBM Trusted Foundry. They're COTS parts. If you look in the Navy systems, we buy racks and racks of circuit boards that are used in the systems. So the challenge is to come up with tools and techniques that can be used broadly across this, and that's where the working with the other communities of interest is important to help us better focus where we need to apply our limited resources to do these deep technical assessments.
Do you feel confident now that there are systems in place to be able to do an in-depth analysis of that?
There are systems in place to do it on a limited basis. We actually, for some of our customers and sponsors, we have been doing this work for years to try to spread it to the bigger DOD is a challenge, and because we just use so many microelectronics. And I like to say we can't really test our way out of this problem. We can't test and screen the hundreds of thousands of microelectronics that we use in DOD. So we have to be very smart and selective where we look and understand the threat and realize that really what we're doing is a threat assessment. We're always going to have a threat no matter what the source. So the question is, how do we rank the threat and where do we put our resources where we think the threats are the highest, or do things in the supply chain, other activities to help reduce that threat?
Great. I have more questions, but I'll come back to that and turn to Ranking Member Spear for her question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is driving the decline in the United States of the microelectronics industry and its migration to Asia?
Well, there are several factors. One is the cost. As the commercial markets are driving to newer, more state-of-the-art needs, particularly in the consumer electronics and the mobile markets, it's a costly thing to update a fab. It's north of $1 billion. Most fabs cost somewhere between $5 to $10 billion to update to the state-of-the-art space that they need to be competitive globally. So there's very few companies across the globe that can make that kind of investment and get the kind of yields they need in order to maintain a profitable business. And so you see a decline in new entrants because the barrier is so high, and you see an exit of current entrants because it's better to partner with sources globally to compete, not just domestically.
Any other comments?
The United States is overall a net exporter of semiconductors, and so we need to understand that there are leading edge capabilities, and those foundries can take great investment to maintain and to operate. But largely, and with many of the capabilities that the Department of Defense systems, the U.S. government systems, use, as Brett mentioned, multiple types of microelectronics technologies are used in our systems, and so there is a spectrum of capabilities and production capabilities still in the United States. And so you need to distinguish the cost of the major fabs that have gone from over the past 10 years, the number of leading-edge foundries has drawn down from then about 10 major foundries to now we have about 4. In comparison, we've got multiple capabilities of domestic manufacturing at other state-of-the-practice nodes and other technology types.
Well, if we believe that this is a national security risk, which I think we can certainly make the argument that it could be, isn't it in our best interest to maintain a foundry or supplier here and do whatever is necessary to make sure that their bottom line is reasonably successful so that the manufacturing continues to be done locally?
We do agree that there is a long-term need for a trusted supplier, a network of trusted suppliers, just like we have established. And we are taking action to make sure that we maintain that access.
So what are the actions you're taking? We have one foundry that's now been sold to a non-U.S. company, and it's unclear whether or not they're going to keep manufacturing here. What are you doing to make sure that that does not get exported?
Well, just a couple points of clarity. There are more than one foundry in the United States, and there are more than one trusted supplier in the United States. There are over a dozen trusted suppliers in the DOD network. Yes, it's in the U.S. interest to maintain as much of the current and legacy capability in the United States as possible, but we're also looking to make investments in the future where technology is driving, which gives us a different view. And so trust network as we know it today may look much different as we design for security throughout all of our major weapon systems and how we bring a consistent way of approaching microelectronics and future technologies and innovation into those major weapon systems. So there is a lot of programs that I use out of my office, particularly the Defense Production Act, Title III that we've used, and we funded many chip technology programs and made the investment along with industry to develop and maintain the capacity. We've used our industrial-based sustainment fund to fund companies to keep design skills and engineering trade craft moving forward. And so we will continue to look at those both as a part of the short-term, mid-term, and long-term strategy for the United States.
You know, there's a lot of companies that have offshored a lot of money that they would like to repatriate. And I would think this would be a great opportunity to allow companies who are so inclined to repatriate their money if it were to go to manufacturing of microelectronics, because we can make the case that it's a national security issue. Ms. Mack, do you have any thoughts on that or any other incentives we can create for companies?
I think, like you said earlier, with the why it was going offshore, there's so many other countries that have industrial-based strategies that include more strategic investments that encourage critical industries and innovation, where here in the defense industrial base, it's much more reactive instead of proactive. So if there's more thought in terms of why do we wait till it's a potential crisis before we actually start coming up with alternatives, and that applied in this particular case with microelectronics. As to what DOD could do in this particular case, we tend to rely on the market to be able to figure out the best strategy. This reliance on DOD DOD has so little influence on the market when it comes to microelectronics, so this may not have been their best strategy. I think part of the issue was when we talked about leading-edge microelectronics, there wasn't a sense of urgency when Defense Science Board first brought it up. IBM's been renewing the contract. It's been always there. DOD was addressing the risk because IBM was there. And if earlier steps had been taken to address some of the alternatives that they're considering now, we may not be in the same situation, especially when it comes to cost, because now you have all the cost that has to be addressed as soon as possible versus spread out over time.
All right, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Scott from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you'll have to forgive me. This is certainly an area that's outside of my area of expertise by a long shot. But global foundries, was owned by IBM and they sold them? Is that, did I understand that correctly?
No, IBM sold its part of its microelectronics business to Global Foundries.
To Global Foundries, okay, all right. And Global Foundries has factories in many countries, Singapore and
In Germany and in the state of New York.
And then the U.S. companies that we have left, I would assume, would be Intel. Who would the others be that are?
Yeah, there's other very good U.S.
Micron.
Micron. We've had Freescale, Photronics, Cypress is here in the room, and there's others. I don't want to single out anyone because there's so many suppliers in this area.
Okay. And so, but you do have a tremendous number of suppliers. It's just that we don't have that many who are trusted suppliers. Is that where the problem is coming in?
So, right, if I can just categorize, the leading edge suppliers,
Right.
that was what the role that the IBM and now Global Foundry was fulfilling. Our trusted supplier network, if I can just refer to my opening statement, we have 72 that are accredited trusted now suppliers. 22 of those can provide full service foundry operations, similar to what the IBM Trusted Foundry was able to provide.
Okay, and so in many instances, when we contract with a private vendor to build a weapon system, for example, we have DOD employees that are on site at that manufacturer to double check and to look quality control and make sure that there are no problems there. Are we doing that with the foundries as well, or are we checking the chips once they come to us? How do we do that with regard to, are we on site, in other words, at the foundries?
No, great question. Part of this accreditation that the Defense Microelectronics activity does works with these companies that are interested in becoming trusted suppliers and certifies that those companies are able to process classified information as well as unclassified information, and that they possess the right checks and balances, that they can provide an assured chain of custody, that they have processes in place to ensure that there would be no threats related to disruption of the supply, that they have processes in place to prevent intentional or unintentional modification of the designs during the manufacture or the services that supplier is providing, and that they protect the design information from any reverse engineering or other exploitation to prevent the loss of that U.S. technology. And that's the process which these suppliers that wish to become accredited.
If you're a small business, it becomes such a large percentage of your volume that if you ever lose the contract, it would have. And so what is the average volume that we spend with one of these suppliers? And do we do multi-year buys, or is it something where we just, every 12 months, we do a new contract?
Right. So when we accredit one of these suppliers, these are suppliers that provide services on a regular basis to broader than just the DOD. So we basically give them sort of a seal of approval, if you will. And then many of the suppliers actually see it as a competitive advantage,
Sure.
Because they have been through this rigor, and it actually can have the effect of potentially increasing their future business space.
But it would take $1 billion to build a small foundry.
Correct. As you go down into the technology, as you increase the technology, as you move down the Moore's law of these sizes of these microelectronics components that Mr. Hamilton was describing, the cost to maintain those foundries increases exponentially. So that leading edge foundry is the one where we were talking about. That is in the billions of dollars to maintain and operate, because in order to be able to produce the yield of microelectronics that are usable, you have to have a certain amount of production that's running through that foundry. It
Sure.
operates 24/7. And I will just say again that the DOD and U.S. government orders for that don't rise to that level. We have typically low volume orders, which is why looking forward we need to find ways that we can technologies, new approaches to be able to make use of more commercial sources, because that to protect our designs and our IP and ensure a much broader set of options, so we're not narrowly focused on a sole source supplier, because we recognize it's not a good risk posture.
Escalating design costs for custom ASICs manufactured at our technology node, which is estimated to be over, especially given the performance exhibited in commercial FPGAs, industry that is pushing state-of-the-art. Because they have enough volume that they can take the $1 million design cost. The problem is this is potentially where a common part could be used across multiple programs, and then you might be able to do something like that.
But thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Florida.
So I have really would like to know, I mean, how reliant are we on these microelectronics? What?
So we're very reliant on microelectronics. It's not only these ASIC chips that we've been talking about, but multiple spectrum of risk reduction measures. In some cases, we would want to restrict or the software that's contained in that component, because in an FPGA, there are no FPGAs that are made on shore. The two major FPGA is of an FPGA device that's largely in the software, because that's a mobile device, which means that making sure that the software that is programmed on that, the approach of system security engineering, or we may want to, because we realize many of our systems, commercial devices, with architectures, when the way understand the functions of that system, and then allow us to focus on what are the critical components, and then for those critical components, procure from a certain supplier, test it through laboratories and tools like we have assembled, or architect overall effect to degrade the operation of the performance. So we could have sensors on the system that would just shut that part of.
Thank you very much. That was a very thorough answer, and I really appreciate it. You mentioned the potential of possibly bringing this within DOD. Based on what Ms. Baldwin just said, is that something, considering the private sector, or would we be able to compete?
I think the opportunities to compete are definitely there, but it's clear for the FPGAs that have been discussed, those are offshore systems. It has to be in a trusted environment. So that means the offshore companies, it doesn't. So it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take a lot of, could meet leading edge at this point, which is not, except for IBM and now Global Foundries. If it could, it would take them significant time, talking about years, exist.
Okay, I'm about out of. Thank you very much. I would just say that I think the general keeping track of the threat assessment, we're focused on that on a regular basis. I'm sorry, Ms. Chairman, I will conclude with, if we're not certain that our microelectronics are secure, our system's not going to be secure. So thank you very much.
Very good. I wanted to go back to you, Ms. Baldwin, though. You had mentioned there were 70 trusted suppliers, and that may be true, but not shortfall.
So we have been
Talking to your microphone a little closer.
Excuse me.
Perfect. Thanks.
yes, sorry, technologies that the IBM Foundry was providing. It was over a series of technology nodes. They had a series of products was available domestically that could replace no one source that could replace all of those product lines. So and we are in the process of, as has been mentioned, reaching out industrial base and really getting a sense of where they're going and taking all, the last thing we want to do is find ourselves in a similar situation, a source supplier. And so we want to, in this menu, we do need to have sources for critical components of this threat. So the types of labs that we've federated are a continuing need. And we do think that there are, from a different standpoint, some of the technologies that are being invested in right now by some of the performers that I mentioned before could potentially allow us to utilize different manufacturing sources, but still be able to protect our critical IP and our critical intellectual property and the functionality of the chip, and provide that level of assurance just by, or these
being manufactured.
Was its national security implication, and could the federal agencies and major weapon systems still have access to the critical technologies that we needed? And on the short term, the answer was we were able to come up with an agreement to allow them to do business with the federal government. So we believe in the short term that we've addressed the short-term need and issue, and we can continue to get what we need today and for the foreseeable next few years. But we're working in real time on what the future will look like, and the study is to address things beyond FY17 and what the menu of options will be.
So your study looks for beyond 17, but until then you feel comfortable at this point
Yes.
that we'll be able to access what we need. You mentioned, Ms. Baldwin, an accreditation process that you're reaching out. So are you reaching out to these other suppliers and talking to them about how they can become accredited in defense-related work to become more trusted?
Yes, we actually, we work pretty regularly with industry associations, and several working groups have stood up, and that allows us a vehicle to communicate. So the existing trusted supplier network we engage with regularly, and there has grown a industry consortium or working group through our National Defense Industrial Association, as an example, which is an opportunity for the department and our agency partners and the services to meet with these industries. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Mack, what are your thoughts on the strategy that DOD has presented for moving forward to maintain longer-term access to leading-edge microelectronics?
I agree with what Ms. Baldwin talked about in terms of a menu of options. It's pretty much like a patchwork type approach, because what IBM offered was that wide spectrum of options to meet their needs, and there are definitely trusted suppliers in the U.S., but they don't provide the leading edge. Could they get there? Potentially. It's going to cost and it's going to take time. I'd like to go back to the one question that you mentioned earlier to clarify with respect to the short term. From our work, we found that even the agreements that they went through, we're not convinced that they're going to be able to provide continued access even for the next year, unless there's still discussions ongoing for that. So short term, it may be a bigger issue than we are acknowledging here, I think.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to go back in time. IBM had a 10-year contract. It had a sole source contract. It was in a very rarefied position. Are we basically saying we didn't have a contract with them that was so ironclad that they would be required to maintain that operation in terms of providing leading edge microelectronics as a component of that sole source contract? And why wasn't it for 30 years or 40 years? Was this a contract that was only for 10 years, or was this a contract that was renewed every year so they were in a position to sell it? And they do business with us in lots of other areas. So why are we tiptoeing around this?
Well, I agree with you. I'm in violent agreement with you. Yes, IBM, well, back up. So IBM's contract was a competitive bid. What happened as a successful offer, they became the sole supplier because they were the successful offer of the competitive bid. It was for 10 years with one-year options, and IBM found themselves in a very difficult place with this business, where they were losing a lot of money. I think in the last balance sheet, they stated they were going to lose $750 million a year by maintaining the capability. And so having a contract with the U.S. government and enforcing them to stay in business in something that they're losing money in that's a very difficult balance, where we don't have the tools and the authorities through the regulatory process, whether it's antitrust or foreign investment, to make anyone stay in business when they're losing money. And so they searched aggressively, and they worked with Global Foundries to find a partner that they thought that they would still continue to need to get access from, that they could have as a trusted supplier to them, not just to the federal government. And so I think those things went into the reason why IBM decided to exit the business and turn over to Global Foundries, because they maintain a state-of-the-art facility not far from the ones that Global Foundries, that is, not far from the ones that they acquired.
So when did they notify you that they were going to sell off the business?
I think the official notification happened in second quarter of the calendar year of this year.
So when were you first aware? When did they first tell you they were having trouble and then they needed some workout?
I'm not sure on that answer, but the first that I heard about it was when they made the official announcement and filed with the interagency committee. It's when it became real.
Well, at some point, if it was a 10-year contract, you would start negotiating a new contract in year 8, right?
They still had multi-years left on the contract that they were maintaining. So it wasn't a year 8.
I'm not following you. I thought you said that it was a 10-year contract, and
Yeah.
at the end of the 10 years, they chose not.
No, we had just awarded the contract.
What?
Yeah, we were about 2 years into it. I'll let Kristen pick up on.
Wait a second. You're saying it was a 10-year contract and they were 2 years into it, and now they're not going to comply with the contract?
It's a 10-year, it was a option year, it was a 10-year contract that was awarded with 10 option, it was a 1-year contract with 10
Oh, that's really
option
smart, isn't it?
years. There was, right.
So you're saying that for something as important for our national security as leading-edge microelectronics, we were awarding a 1-year contract with options to renegotiate. So we were setting ourselves up
Right.
in a very bad negotiating position.
That was what the offerer was willing to negotiate with the Department of Defense. And that they were we did run a full and open competition, and they were the sole offerer.
Well, I
So
thought you said there were 2,
No,
and then one went out of business, or one.
I didn't say that.
No.
All right. So this foundry, this building still exists, right? Because
Yes.
it costs so much money to create. This billion-dollar facility exists?
Yes, essentially the 2 facilities that Global Foundries had acquired through this process still exist today, and they still produce the products that the U.S. government needs. It's just owned by a different company, Global Foundries. Many of the same processes, the same people are there. They acquired the assets from IBM.
All right, I yield back.
Thank you, and we are taking votes, so you have the last question? So very much appreciate you being here. This has been very enlightening, very concerning at the same time, but certainly raises the issue of how we need to address this for our national security, and appreciate your efforts, all of you, to help in this endeavor as we move forward. So thank you so much for being here, and this will conclude our hearing.